Well, I don't know. We turn this on. Oh,
Is it on? Oh, now it's off. Yeah, it's on.
testing.
Yep.
Waiting just a moment to get everybody in for Zoom. Okay. One person waiting. Okay. Mr. Costa, there's one person waiting. 2 people. Okay.
Yeah. It is warmer tonight.
It is.
Yes. That damn building and grounds committee. That's named it.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Portsmouth School Committee meeting of Tuesday, August 24th, 2021. If you please rise and join me in a pledge of allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops in harm's way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody, both virtually and in person. Prior to this meeting, we had an executive session. No votes were taken. Can I have a motion to seal executive session minutes from August 11th and August 24th, 2021?
So moved. Second.
All in, I'm going to do a roll call vote since we're not all present tonight. Isabel Kelly? Aye. Karen McDade? Aye. Alan Shears?
Aye.
Fred Porter? Tom Badney?
Aye.
Emily Copeland? Aye. Carlos Pereira absent, 6-0. Moving on to chairperson's remarks. So let the record reflect that Mr. Pereira is not able to join us tonight. So we have 6 of the 7 here. For the emergency evacuation plan, should there be an emergency, we will exit either, I feel like an airline stewardess, out the back to the side, and we will meet over at the new gym. RIAS update. So we were supposed to have a meeting on Monday with the Commissioner of Education, talk about school opening. Obviously, that was the day after Hurricane Henri, so they postponed that. But there was a meeting on August 20th. Ms. McDade and myself both attended that meeting. And there were 3 topics covered, which it was very interesting. So they had the RIAS lawyer there that talked about open meeting laws, public comment. Some districts don't allow public comment from Zoom. Portsmouth has made the decision to do so. So there was discussion about that. They were talking about what groups are public and not public when it comes to school committees and public bodies. Then Keith Stokes gave an update on the African heritage history, which was really fascinating. This is the Education Act that 2 years ago put curriculum development in the hands of RIDE for the basic education program. And then now just recently, they passed the requirement for African heritage. And he really talked a lot about, I'm just pulling up my notes on this, that Rhode Island really has kind of a treasure trove of fact-based content that enables it to really enrich the teaching of African heritage and history at age-appropriate levels. It's an what does he say here? This effort will enable all students to embrace a more inclusive history of Rhode Island and America, recognizing we all learn more when we learn together. It's basically a fact-based content that's going to be developed that focuses on that African diaspora. And he really did a lot of emphasis talking about, and I'm sure we'll hear more from this when it comes to curriculum development. This doesn't take effect till the 22-23 school year. They've got grants to do teacher training and development. I asked him if they were going to have internships available for students, and he hoped so. But he did make a point of saying that this is not critical race theory that they're doing here. That, you know, he elaborated that critical race theory is a body of legal scholarship and an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States, examining US law as it intersects with issues of race. This is really looking at the coursework will be based upon documented content that presents the history of Rhode Island within the context of the times being studied. So that was a really fascinating presentation. And then the last speaker was Chris Horan, who was talking about engaging the public comments, talking about school committees and communication plans. And he's actually on our agenda tonight too. So, but it was a very useful RIAS meeting. So, Ms. McDade, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I just want to add one little thing.
Oh,
No.
Just talk for a minute. It'll go on. Just start talking.
Okay, so I just wanted to add a quick comment that in Keith Stokes' presentation, he was talking about some of the tools for teachers that they're developing. And they were really exciting. They're developing databases of information that teachers can access or have their students access. He was talking about having virtual tours of historical sites in Newport and other places. So that was also something that I thought was just really exciting to hear about.
Thank you. Moving on to public comment. If you have a comment on an issue that's on the agenda, we can have that comment during the discussion of the agenda item. If you have a public comment on something that's not on the agenda, feel free to come up now. And I think Ms. Rhodes has our list of public comment here. Larry Fitzmaurice, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Larry Fitzmaurice, 50 Christian Court. I'd like to speak to the committee about police presence last school committee meeting on August 11th. I don't see the need for that, frankly. And I notice that they're here again tonight. I think the committee should trust the citizens of this town more than they do. I've been going to meetings for a long time, both council, school committee, and other meetings. I don't recall any incident necessary for police intervention. I think the presence of the police will intimidate those people who want to come forward and speak. I think it's something that needs to stop. I ask the committee to avoid that in the future. Planet, I don't think that is appropriate. This is a democracy after all of us. People.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you very much. Warren Caldwell. You just talking to the mic so everybody can hear you. Thanks. You'll have to raise it a bit, I think. There we go.
I'm sure in correspondence, you all know why I'm here. I put something together, I'm just gonna say it, hoping if I word out, it's finally happening, if I can do it, so. 2 weeks is what they told us when we started in March 2020. Always been a student of history as a result of my father teaching the importance of such education. I've never been more aware of this in recent months. I consider myself an educated, experienced individual. I have a bachelor's in criminal justice, a master's in administration of justice and homeland security. I serve in our U.S. military. I've had a long career in law enforcement, serving as a patrolman, a detective, and now as supervisor sergeant. I have a wife of 12 years, 2 children, a mortgage, and I've been a law-abiding citizen my whole life. I'm confident my critical thinking skills are pretty astute. But I cannot for the life of me figure out why you're making decisions you are making, in particular for this mask mandate for our kids. The lockdown happened, I remember sitting across from my coworker on travel, staying in the last 2 weeks. That was on our last non-lockdown night. Based on historical reference, I knew that wouldn't be the case, and oh boy, was I right. There's human nature to grasp onto power, never relinquish it, in many cases, to continue to obtain more of it, especially in the institutions of government. We've seen this time and time again in history. I would think educators such as yourself would understand this. I won't repeat the statistics, information, knowledge, other things which those who spoke before me on the subject matter provided in order to make this case. I think enough has been said, and yet those in power, you, local, state, federal officials, refuse to hear us. So I think at this point, we'll just fall on deaf ears. However, it's absolutely unbelievable to me that quote unquote the smartest people in the room continue to enact these mandates. Which, for the record, are not laws. These have not been debated, legislated, or voted on by anyone. These are nothing merely more than edicts handed down by executive fiat for masses. We claim to have concern in the safety of our children. We could just save one life with the mentality we have. We've heard this from various experts on how masks, when worn for long periods of time, are unhealthy for children. Yet you force my child to wear a mask. We've heard time and time again the psychological effects on children because of these mandates, yet you force my child to wear a mask. We've heard time and time again the disastrous educational effects mask mandates have on our children, yet you force my child to wear a mask. What discounts those experts versus the government experts who continue to push these mandates? Nearly 200 kids died in 2019. Sad, but 200 died of the seasonal flu. And suicide attempts have risen dramatically during lockdowns and during mandates. These are just a few examples of the real killers of children, not COVID. So why now? Why not push masks years ago? I don't have that answer. However, if we could just save one life, right? To enact policy on a demographic that's not even really affected by COVID, yet the result is more harm. How does this make any sense? I said it from the beginning, I'm openly skeptical of all this. However, say what you will, recommend what you must. But that's all this should be. Recommendations, it should be optional. I know what's best for my child, not you or any other government official. I understand you are just following directives from your bosses, I get it. However, how many times have we heard this throughout history? I was just doing what I was ordered to do. This may sound like an extreme example. However, where do we stop? At what point do we say enough is enough? How long do we keep this going? The rest of this year, next year, 5, 10, 15 years? What else will we mandate in the name of public safety? There's always going to be disease ready to wipe out humanity. But when do we decide to give up freedom of liberty and the right to choose our own self-destiny for the feeling of security? Benjamin Franklin once said, those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a temporary safety neither deserve liberty nor safety. These words couldn't ring more true today. I am saddened for my fellow citizens who would rather give up this liberty, but even more appalled that they expect me to give up mine. There is one good thing that has been born out of this tragedy. It's that you have awakened a lot of people, including myself, to the political circus that our system has become. I never intended to get involved in anything political in my life. Sure, I paid attention, but I moved to the great town of Portsmouth because I trusted the local government to do what's best for me, especially for my children with the outstanding reputation this town has for the educational system. However, that trust is eroded. You have done nothing more than force a strong sense of resentment for all of you. Many people just want to be left alone, go to work, pay their taxes, raise their family, and live a decent, law-abiding life. I've always admired a quote that was said at the end of a 1970 Pearl Harbor film, Tora, Tora, Tora. Although it was never verified that he actually said it after the attack, Admiral Yamamoto in the film, after the Japanese attack, said about the Americans, I fear all we have done is awaken a sleeping giant and fill them with terrible resolve. Well, folks, I couldn't agree more. I think there are many parents out there, like me, who have had enough. For the tenure you have left on this board, because I have a feeling many of you may not be sitting there next election cycle, and all these parents decide, you know what, perhaps we will just take time away from our busy lives to inject ourselves into the system so we can decide what's good for our kids, not you. Perhaps the common man and woman will decide to throw their hat into the ring and shake things up a bit. I say this not out of anger or hatred, but instead of deep-rooted love for my country, what she stands for and what we as Americans have fought so hard to create. I've spent my entire adult and professional life defending the rights of lives of people I never knew and never met before encountering them on the street. And I've also made the conscious choice when raising my right hand in defense of the Constitution that someday, if need be, I would need to give my life in the service of my country. What makes you think I wouldn't fight just as hard, if not harder, for my children, my flesh and blood? In my opinion, if you continue these mandates, shame on you. But there is still time. Do what I think deep down a lot of you want to do. Do not follow these erroneous mandates from the state. Be the change, set the tone for the rest of the school districts and for our country. Just say no. And by the way, and to close this, well, folks, it's August 24th, 2021. It was only supposed to be 2 weeks. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello? 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 Okay, so thank you for your comment. Joe Deering?
Joe Deering, 417 Middle Road. Good evening, Portsmouth School Committee and fellow parents. William Penn once said, right is right, even if everyone is against it. Wrong is wrong, even if everyone is for it. It's been 529 days since our leaders stated 14 days to fight the curve. We learned a lot from our school committee's mistakes over the past 529 days. Number one, kids need to be in class learning. 2, kids don't need to wear masks outdoors. 3, kids need to play sports and exercise daily. Daily exercise is the best prevention method for kids getting COVID-19. Last mistake we need to correct is to make masks optional in class and school. By show of hands, who on this committee is wearing more than one mask? So there's one.
We can't, sorry, hello, we can't respond to public, I'm sorry, we can't respond for public comment.
Don't need to respond. So there's one, but I'm sure they are not feeling less safe because everyone is not wearing double masks. But for the record, Dr. Ponson said double masking makes common sense. Yet I don't see any proposal for double masks. By show of hands, who on the committee is wearing a mask that has been scientifically tested with COVID-19 in an isolated environment? I know that nobody is wearing a mask that's been tested against COVID because that scientific test has not been done. Yet suicide attempts among children are up 20%. Many psychologists believe prolonged mask wearing is partially explained. Children are more likely to die from cancer, vehicle accident, suicide, homicide, cardiovascular disease, drowning, and the common flu than they are from COVID. Statistically, you can save more children's lives by building a swimming pool and mandating swimming lessons than you can from your mask mandate. Your emotions neither prove or disprove facts. Marcus Aurelius stated, nobody is harmed by the truth. Ignorance and self-deception causes harm. It's self-deception is causing harm to our children. Please make mask wearing optional for the mental health safety of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. 1, 2, hello. I'm not sure why we're having a delay. Hello? Hello? Sorry?
They're also
Hello?
saying they can't hear it.
Hello? Hello?
Do we need to turn some of the fans off? Test.
It kind of comes on and off.
Yeah, something's going on up top.
During that, the PSD thing lit up and there was.
My light is on.
All right, now I'm on. Okay. Sorry about that flight delay. We did see from Zoom that they were having trouble hearing public comment because of the fans. And I think we're going to turn some of these fans off. I think you can hear me because I have a mic right next to my mouth. Okay, that was all who signed up in the room. We do have one Zoom public comment. Can I have Sophia Sinclair, Mr. Costa? Can we unmute Sophia Sinclair, please, for public comment? Go ahead. Can you state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Sophia Sinclair, 201 Ethel Drive.
Thank you.
Okay, you can hear me? Okay, great. So to the school committee, I know you're in a tough position and I'm grateful for your time. I know I've sent a lot of emails. I hope you've been reading them. And I am grateful, that you are allowing me to have a voice here. I know I've said a lot about this topic and many people listening in might believe that I'm being reckless and uninformed. So I'm going to take the opportunity tonight to set the record straight. This is not a conversation about whether COVID is real. This is not right versus left. This is a conversation about balanced and effective mitigations in consideration of the developmental needs of children, which have been ignored. I've been advocating for months for students to remove masks while seated at their desks. I know a lot of people want to get rid of them altogether. I'm personally okay if they just take them off at their desks. I think it's reasonable to keep all of the other mitigations in place, to keep the kids in pods and allow them to remove their masks while they're seated so they can learn appropriately. This is not an unprecedented position, nor is it reckless or uninformed. Many of America's peer nations, including the UK, Ireland, all of Scandinavia, France, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Italy, and Israel have exempted kids with varying age cutoffs from wearing masks in classrooms. It pains me to know that in other parts of the world, kids are getting back to normal, and yet ours are caught in this tug of war. In addition, a large-scale study of COVID transmission in US schools published by the CDC at the end of May noted that masking unvaccinated teachers, not children, and improving ventilation with more fresh air were associated with lower incidence of virus in schools. Of equal importance in the study, masking students was not found to have a statistically significant benefit. And further, there have been absolutely zero randomized controlled trials done to isolate masks as an effective mitigation strategy in schools. That is a true statement. I know we hear studies this and studies that. No one has done a controlled trial where they've isolated masks. In order to prove the effectiveness of an intervention like masks, for example, you have to isolate it and you need a control group. No studies have done that. The truth is, no one can and no one has isolated masks as the golden ticket to mitigating COVID spread in schools. In the absence of that information and in the presence of parents who are telling you their children are adversely affected, you must listen. Many parents have brought to this community valid concerns that are not being addressed. They are being dismissed. It is extremely worrying that we are ignoring the impact this is having on children. Now, I know people will point to the South and their failures, but reports of high spread in those schools leave out the fact that rates within the school mirror rates in the community. And in addition, those schools have almost no mitigations in place. They are not in stable pods. They are not masked in common spaces like hallways. They aren't considering ventilation. They're having lunch with the entire grade, and they're even having huge assemblies. I've seen it. I've actually looked at some of their back to school plans because I'm curious when I read headlines. And what I found was a lack of most, if any, mitigations. So there is no comparison in what we are doing to what they are doing. If you dig a little deeper than the headlines, you'll notice this too. I realize there are factors beyond the control of the school board at this point, but I'm saying this now for all listening ears because while there may be a decision today, and that decision doesn't have to be final, we have to keep reevaluating what we are doing and why. Some things that have already been reevaluated and found to be harmful in retrospect are outdoor masking. And I won't say much on this because this was obvious from the start that this was not necessary. And yet it took several months for the CDC to acknowledge what most logical people already knew. School closures. It took over a year for the experts to realize that school closures were incredibly harmful to children. Parents could have told you that 1 month in, but we don't listen to parents. And in the meantime, many kids were held hostage while the experts figured it out. Plexiglass barriers, while well-intended, they have recently been found to reduce the proper airflow in the room and therefore may hinder proper ventilation. If they are not affected and if effective and in fact may be detrimental to airflow, I encourage the school committee to look into this immediately and decide if they need to come down before school starts. Not doing this reevaluation with updated data would be reckless and irresponsible. And optimistically, there's a new mitigation that we should also look into. The UK is providing CO2 monitors in each classroom. They noted that elevated levels of CO2 will signal that the room is not properly ventilated, and we know ventilation works. The cost for these is very reasonable and something we should look into spending federal funding on. It may help to ensure the rooms are properly ventilated and keep everyone safe. And this is a mitigation that is cost-free to our students. This is also worth further investigation by the committee. I also wanted to add a bit of optimism. Some recent projections are suggesting that the South is seeing its Delta peak now, and it is starting to come down. And some projections note that the Northeast may be peaking in the next few weeks and will start to come down as well. With an eye on September 18th, when the current executive order on masks in schools expires, I expect everyone, parents, administrators, and elected officials, to be looking at the data and form a reasonable position. We owe it to our children to consistently reevaluate this situation and weigh the mitigations against their effectiveness and their negative impacts, because they are piling up. The masks do have costs, and we should not ignore that. We have to start somewhere, and I firmly believe, based on all available information, that kids can safely remove masks, even if just while seated, while all the other mitigations are in place. I suspect universally masking children while learning will be one of those things where, in hindsight, we realize we could have done better. It may take a few years as the results start to show up in our kids, in their mental health, their socialization habits, their academics. It's actually starting to show up now. The greater impacts will take time, but they'll happen. I hope I'm wrong, but I suspect this decision will not age well. So we need to keep reevaluating and pushing for whatever sense of normalcy we can provide for our children. And I'll leave everyone with a quote from Nelson Mandela. We have the obligation to put sunshine into the hearts of our little ones. They are our precious possessions. They deserve what happiness life can offer. I am asking you to please think about what happiness we can offer our children. We owe them that much. Thank you.
Thank you. There will be more on this when we get down to the superintendent's update and then the business agenda as well. So this will be continued. All right, that's the end of my list. Moving on to personnel. Is it on masking? Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, ma'am. Ma'am, you just got to stop. You got to sign in, put your name on, and then state your name and address for the record. Sorry. Got to dot our I's and cross our T's with our lawyer sitting here. Son? Sorry, I'm sorry. What is? Okay.
Natalie Orban, 45 Child Street.
Okay, yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you. June 20th, Dr. Kinsworthy, you wrote me this. I have asked specifically for Portsmouth. I have offered to have our district to be a pilot for making masks optional. You have the opportunity right now to follow through with that. The governor's mandate, yes, you do. The governor's mandate is unauthorized. He has no legal authority to do this. He's already being sued. You have a lawyer. I encourage you to use that lawyer. I have a lawyer as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Sorry, I missed the sign.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
No, try, just keep talking.
Yeah, they might think that.
Hello?
Yep, there you go.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jason DeFalco. I live at 15 Maze Corn Road. I have a incoming seventh grader and an incoming 10th grader. I'm going to share, I guess, an opposing view from everything you've heard this evening. First and foremost, I want to start by thanking the committee. I want to start by thanking the administration. You have just had 18 months of very difficult planning, very difficult implementation. And it is because of your hard work and effort that our schools have remained open. I challenge our residents to come up with a list of school districts across Rhode Island or in Massachusetts in our area that kept all of its kindergarten through sixth grade classrooms open in person 5 days a week. That was no easy task, but you did it. Now we're at a point where we have to make some other difficult decisions. And some of the statistics that were shared earlier, I certainly understand and respect, but I will tell you that I believe firmly that the school committee and the superintendent will make the right decision because they have all along. I entrust my two boys, who I love more than anything, in your hands every day and in the hands of our educators, and you are doing incredible work. So I thank you very much for my household, and I expect that you'll continue to make the right choice. And I am sure that whatever that is, whether it's masks or optional, whatever you decide to do, we will stand behind that because you have not steered us wrong yet. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. One more. Can you come up and, or just sign in, please?
Hi, I'm Alison Harper. I live at 84 Financial Drive. I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
if now is the time to say this or during the district update, but I completely agree with whoever just spoke. I'm so thankful that my kids were able to be in school all year last year. I have family in Pennsylvania. They've already, my niece has already been quarantined after 2 days of school, and they are not optional. I don't necessarily have a strong opinion one way or the other, but I completely trust whatever decisions that you will make. I have a daughter going into 6th grade and a son going into 4th grade. And my 6th grade daughter is hoping that when wearing masks, maybe other things like being able to use lockers, change classes, other things that are like fun about middle school and like mixing pods outside, those things, since you're already wearing a mask, would maybe be possible. I don't know if you have already made that decision or if this is the time to comment on that, but I just wanted to put that opinion out there. Also, I do agree with Sophia about possibly not masking off sitting in your seat. They take their mask off for lunch. But otherwise, thank you for everything you've done, and I'm very thankful for the state and doing this.
Thank you. Just seeing if anybody wants. No? Okay, again, we're gonna probably have more discussion on this as we move forward. So moving on, thank you for all the public comment. Moving on to the superintendent's update, Dr. Kenworthy.
Thank you, Dr. Copeland. Good evening to the rest of the committee members and members of the public. First up in my updates are personnel updates. Since our last school committee meeting on August 11th, I have met with and welcomed into our district several new hires. Nathan Eckersley, a clerical B in the IT department, Melanie Maria, a senior exhibition coordinator at Portsmouth High School, Virginia Evans, social studies teacher at Portsmouth High School, and 3 RBT registered behavior technicians, Paige Stovall, April Ford, and Abby Lemieux. and also a general school aide at Hathaway, Kathy Silvera. We were also able to recall Joshua Anderson, alternative learning program teacher at Portsmouth High School, who was pending a certification issue that has been resolved. We did have one resignation since the last school committee meeting, Andrea Purvis, general school aide at Hathaway. And we have some final coaching appointments for the upcoming fall season. I read off a slew of them, most of them at the last meeting. So this meeting, we are welcoming Lewis Robinson, assistant coach for JV girls soccer at Portsmouth High School. Thomas Rocco, assistant coach for football at Portsmouth High School, and several PMS coaching appointments. Richard Van Venga, head coach for girls soccer, Ryan Soares, head coach for boys soccer, Nancy Mendonça, head coach for cross country, and Ellen Chilavato, assistant coach for cross country. So welcome to all those individuals. Next up are just some general district updates since our last meeting. First off, I'm pleased to report we did not have any significant storm damage related to Tropical Storm Henri within the Portsmouth School District. I think Portsmouth and most of Picnic Island, East Bay was spared from the worst of the storm. We do have some minor cleanup, that type of thing that our custodial maintenance staff is dealing with within their final week of preparation, getting ready to open our schools. Last week, our full district leadership team, consisting of all central office and school administrators, met for a 2-day leadership and planning retreat. We typically do this each summer, and it's very helpful to our plannings and preparations for the upcoming school year. I'll have more information to share for the committee at our upcoming school committee workshop. Our summer story time series wraps up this Thursday. That's been happening at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. So I will be the final guest reader this Thursday, and I know I have big shoes to fill from some of our previous readers. Portsmouth will be hosting a vaccination clinic prior to the start of the school year in conjunction with our town partners on this. So Friday, August 27th, we're going to do it from 1 to 3 and 4 to 7, right here in the PHS Fieldhouse, as we had been doing with some of our final clinics of the school year last year. We just open to anyone who wants to sign up 12 years and older. And I believe these clinics use the Pfizer vaccine, which many people may be aware received full FDA authorization this week. So people can even go there, they get a second dose. If they receive the first dose, they really relax the rules. I think they'll take walk-ins. And if anybody receives the first dose on August 27th, and the follow-up clinic to that will be on September 17th. And this is our last school committee meeting before we officially start the 2021-22 school year. All district staff will report on August 31st for our district orientation day. Then we have several student orientations and some staff professional development on September 1st and 2nd. And all students will report officially by September 8th. We'll take a nice long break for the Labor Day weekend. As you know, I've been updating you on upgrades to the town hall chambers. They are in progress, I'm told, and hoping that we can return to the chambers as we've been planning to do this school year for our September 14th meeting. So I'll keep you updated on that. And then I'm going to segue into a presentation that you have. So last meeting I shared with you the key recommendations from the Department of Education and Department of Health that all districts were asked to incorporate into their fall reopening plan. So as you know, throughout the summer, a lot has been changing. We've been dealing with many updates to guidance and recommendations that we've received. So our plan, all district plans in Rhode Island are due by this Friday, August 27th. Committee members, in your backup, you have a full draft of the plan. So based on anything you have to offer this evening or some changes, we make over the next couple of days, we'll be submitting a final plan to ride by this Friday. Tonight, I'm just going to share some of the highlights of that plan. Once it is received and we confirm it meets all specifications by RIDE, we will of course be posting it to the district website. So,
Dr. Kenworthy, can you stop for 1 second?
sure.
Mr. Costa on Zoom, it's still showing the agenda and now.
So Heather has them, right?
Oh, okay. So I could share my screen or maybe.
Yeah, or I could share my-
her screen.
Do you want me to share my screen?
And just so that the virtual folks can see that.
So open it before I share anything. Sorry. Here we go.
I can do it if you want me to.
No, I'm sorry. I have it. I'm just, there's a few things in the folder. I want to make sure I'm sharing everything. Just bear with me.
Sorry about that, but we do have 48 people on Zoom, so we thought it might be useful. They could see it too.
Getting there. Okay. Share. All right, so everyone can see that if you're on the Zoom, correct?
Yep.
All right. So again, committee members, you have a full copy of the draft plan tonight. I just wanted to share some highlights. Our plan, of course, we are taking all of the guidance and recommendations from the Department of Ed, Department of Health. Things have been changing, as we've talked about, mainly by the onset of the Delta variant in Rhode Island throughout the summer. For distance learning, I had focused on last meeting on the key recommendations. So our plan, and will include the fact that we will not be offering a full distance learning option in Portsmouth, as Rhode Island districts are no longer required to do this. We will work with students. Parents have a legitimate medical need. They're going to be asked to work through their school with their school principal, and we will make individual accommodations as needed. And of course, homeschooling is always an option for families. It's not something that we encourage, but we also cannot stand in the way if families want to do that. So last year we did see, as all districts did, an increased number of homeschooling options from families. We're hoping that we can pull most of those things back into the district, but we do need to clarify that that is always an option for families. Regarding spacing and grouping, you'll see in our plan, we're going to reflect that we feel confident we can maintain 3 foot spacing, which is the minimal recommendation in all of our schools. Our younger grades, particularly unvaccinated age groups up to PK up through grade 6, will remain as much as possible in their stable pods. And we'll take advantage of outdoor opportunities for dining and learning experiences as much as possible. Busing and student transportation, right, and the recommendations I shared at the last meeting, you'll see our plan will reflect there are no capacity restrictions this year for busing. We will continue to try to keep stable busing pods, have seating charts, working with First Student, our bus company. And as we discussed at the last meeting, regardless of wherever the mask mandates or requirements ended up for schools, per federal order, masks are required on school buses. So it's a nationwide thing. So we knew no matter what, that would be in place on buses. Face coverings in general, we're going to talk more about this in the business portion, but I anticipate we're going to be where we ended the school year. So outdoors, masks are not going to be required. Indoors, we do have a mask mandate now from Governor Key, which we've had to factor into any final recommendations for where we will land. That will need to be clearly reflected in our real estate plan. For screening, I can report we will, kind of where we were able to end the school year, we'll be able to have a one-time sign off, but families will be asked and staff members will be asked to complete that, just again, to make sure everyone is kind of refocusing in on what those symptoms are that we all need to be watching out for and the steps that we should take if symptoms are experienced. Quarantine. I had shared in the recommendations at the last meeting, we are going to go with the 7-day with a negative test result for any quarantines that have to happen this year. Really for quarantines for this year, we're going to be talking about unvaccinated individuals. So we know we have a big portion of our student body right now, anybody under the age of 12. But anybody who is vaccinated from the 12 and older age group or staff does not need to quarantine if they are part of the close contact investigation. So recommendation will be to get tested. We'll work with individuals as that comes up. There's still some questions regarding travel. We don't expect we had a lot of strict restrictions last year around travel and quarantine. We don't expect have those, but I think there are some final decisions being worked out there. So we will incorporate those into our plan. I mentioned we're going to go with the 7-day negative test option when quarantines do have to take place. And if there were an outbreak or other extenuating circumstances, then we would work with the Department of Health for any further decisions from there. For testing, we do expect to have testing in place. Definitely symptomatic testing, right? So if students are displaying symptoms in school, all of our nurses will have the ability to deploy that. Asymptomatic question is the testing. Is the question right now what we will do for testing schedule. We are waiting final word on. There was a grant that districts could apply for. It will help tremendously with supplies and even money for personnel. So we're hoping to get word on that before the end of the week when we have to submit our plan, as that will be a deciding factor in how we will open the school year with our asymptomatic testing. And then, of course, we have the question around athletics. So we will have some form of testing in place for athletics, and we're waiting on some final word from the Rhode Island Interscholastic League Department of Health at this time. So again, those are the main highlights. You have again a copy of the full draft. I don't know if anybody has questions on any of that at this time.
Mr. Shears.
Thank you. I'm not sure whether we're going to have a vote or what on this as this keeps going with the superintendent. But I thought that with everything that's been happening, this meeting and the meeting before, and the people coming out and expressing their interest and putting in the time, that I thought that the people were owed at least some of our thoughts and whatnot in regards to it before just passing it on and going forward with it. I think at least I feel I owe that to the people that have put in their time coming here and on Zoom. So if you bear with me from a 72-year-old observations and whatnot from what's occurred, I'd like to start and say to everyone, no matter what they feel and what their opinions were and are, etc., elections have consequences. Elections do have consequences. We are all in agreement, every last one of us, that our greatest concern is the health and safety of our children. Huge portions of residents in our country have lost confidence in information that is given out by varied sources. Our country is in total chaos, in my opinion. So-called experts and politicians recite to us varied sworn to facts. Agendas are running rampant. What is quoted one day as the truth is dispelled the next. We are woefully short of true leaders. Personal agendas have won the day. Varied opinions are viewed racist, terrorist, elitist. Our school board has been inundated with emails and letters supporting various positions in which a free society, they are all allowed. Wars have been fought and many have died or been injured, fighting for the right of freedom for all. I repeat, for all. I have tried to review as many of the salient points of masking as possible. At this juncture, I do not know who to believe. I will not pontificate to get votes and keep a seat warm. I certainly do not believe the media, press, politicians, even the medical field is now blurred with the political field. The state and federal government have taken our right to decide away. This is a true shame. One size does not fit all. I repeat, one size does not fit all. Our community has little to gain from the state and federal education process. We should be masters of our own destiny, but once again, we are not. And these were my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mr. Radney?
I have a question about the K-12 testing. Okay, is this something that's optional for the students or is it mandatory?
Yeah, so testing, wherever we land, the asymptomatic testing was optional for the student body, but mandatory for athletes or some extracurriculars like band and chorus.
Right, so that will continue this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Other comments? No? Okay.
Now questions to the update? Sure, come on down. I guess I would say, well, I'm waiting for you to come on down. You know, I appreciate the district's willingness to keep an eye on, you know, the data and what changes and, you know, make modifications as we go on. I think, you know, we're not in the same place where we were last year, you know, where we hadn't opened schools and, you know, now we know how to bring kids back and hopefully, you know, with some of the comments on necessity of mask breaks and things like that, outdoor classrooms, particularly for the little kids. I mean, I think we've all been looking into some of those comments, like, you know, the smile masks were mentioned last time, and we do have them in the district. The problem is they fog up. We do have supplies and masks around for people. So know that your comments are heard and we do look into, you know, how we can adapt and incorporate as we go forward. So can you state your name and address, please, for the record?
Sure. Hi, I'm Sarah Macedo. I live at 8 Trail Road. I want to thank all of you for your hard work. This has been difficult. My question is in regard to classrooms when kids are put into quarantine because of school exposure. Last year, it worked pretty seamlessly where they went right into Zoom school. And so my question is, if my child is put into quarantine because of a school exposure, will there be distance learning in those situations?
Yep. Good for you.
So we'll kind of have some variations there, right? We're not going to have a full distance learning option. So for individual cases as they pop up, you know, the full distance learning option wouldn't be available. There will be asynchronous learning. All teachers from the get-go, we're going to continue with the Google Classroom and updates there. But just as far as the live video link, the exception to that, right, would be if the entire elementary classroom were quarantined, right? We're hoping that we don't have to get to that point again, but we did have a few of those instances last year. Well, in that case, if the entire class is out, then the teacher could shift that instruction, and we'll have the capability to do so. So, yep.
Please come on down. Go ahead. If there's a bunch of questions, come on down. Just say your name and address.
Andrea Cameron, 81 Randolph Way. I had a question about the school lunch and breakfast programs. Last year, they were fully compensated for the whole population. population. I was just wondering what the plan was for this year.
Yeah, so, yeah, we'll start getting the word on that out more, but the federal, that was through the federal government. They're once again going to offer, nationwide free breakfast and lunch. So there'll be no, income variation there. It'll be available to all students again.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Monica Taft. Hi, I'm Monica Taft. I'm about 36 from Lane Ave. I am not only a parent in this community, but I am a teacher, and I have taught there for 28 years. My question is in regards to the pods that will be in the grades that are not able to be vaccinated. Once the vaccinations are given or possibly given to those younger age groups, will those kids be able to have more movement in the school?
I think we're hoping, right? We all know kind of where things are heading here toward the end of the agenda and what we have to have in place to open the school year. I mean, the hope right now is that two things happen. Right now, based on the best, data and predictions and a lot of change, is that September is going to we're going to continue to see a surge and an increase in cases just kind of nationwide and by municipality and whatever that looks like. But hopefully that starts to subside. And then obviously a big key factor here would be as younger age groups are able to be vaccinated. So I think if those two things happen and maybe even start converging at the end of September, then we would have leeway to look at plans that we have in place and make changes. And we did that several times throughout the year last year. So I would anticipate that we would just continue to make changes as needed based on what the situation is looking like.
So when they say pods, are those kids expected to be allowed to move from, because I felt like as not only a teacher, but as a parent, one of the things that took away from those middle school kids, if you if I took it off.
Yeah, you can take off a mask to talk.
So my concern is that for those 5th and 6th grade students that I taught last year and my own child who was in 5th grade, one of the biggest detriments was not his mask, but it was the fact that he had to sit in the same room all day long. For lunch, for this unified arts, for just about everything. The only thing that they could do to get out of that seat was they were to either go to the bathroom, which they went to as a group, and to go outside for recess. My concern, they were more affected by being in one room all day than they were by wearing those masks. And I can tell you because I've talked to a handful of kids, and I'm going to go into that mask thing where I talked about, I don't know, 15 kids at the St. Marcus there this weekend, and they were all like, oh, Mrs. Hopkins are great. When I have a zip, I can cover it. If I don't want to wear makeup, I don't have to. This was the anxiety and everything that I saw of kids. Is they like these pictures and having to wear makeup. They don't care. I have 2 special ed kids. One of them has sensory issues. This did not affect him. What affected him was sitting in one seat all day long in the same. So my hope is that once he gets vaccinated, or the plans going forward would be that they will be able to move about.
Yeah, I think we'll look for the first opportunity to be able to do that. And just like the conversation we're having on masking, you talked to me at the end of June, I wouldn't have thought we would be here in the same situation again with the potting, but it's where we're at, unfortunately, based on the numbers that we're seeing.
I guess I have a follow-up question. Why can't the pod move though?
Well, that was my.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess they're in the pod. Why can't the pod move?
Is that part of the plan?
Yeah, I think it's just right now putting every strategy that we can in place based on the surging numbers that we're seeing. That's what we're being asked to do. I don't want to put the middle school on the spot, but we have several members of our leadership team here, including the entire middle school staff. But I don't know if there are little nuanced changes that we know already would be in place from where we were last year with potting at the middle school.
They are in pod. Students are going to the teachers. They are moving as a pod.
Oh, so the principal just said they will be in pods, but they will move to the teachers. Did I state you correctly? So they will be moving. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of how, we can make things better in little ways, hopefully. So we can, that's a great.
At the elementary level, grades are going to also be, so the students will be moving to the UA classes, whereas the UAs are coming to them.
Yeah, so let me repeat this, that type of moving of pods will also be occurring at the elementary level. So they will be going to their unified arts classrooms in pods as opposed to staying in the classroom all day. Okay. Thank you. Question, please.
Or just of a clarification, you talked about distance learning if there's some sort of outbreak or exposure. Can you just clarify, Dr. Kemper? So if the entire class is out, obviously you need to have distance learning. It's just several of them. What's the option? It seemed like there was really an answer.
So it would,
So will there be distance learning? Is it 2, 3, 4 kids are out?
that wouldn't be the plan right now. There would be full asynchronous, Google, teachers will be updating their Google Classroom, all of that. But I think right now the plan that would institute like a full distance learning option for a class would be an entire classroom being quarantined.
Okay, thank you.
There's a question in the chat here. It says, is Rhode Island looking to do any sort of test and stay program for school-based close contacts like Massachusetts is?
Not sure what exactly that's referencing.
So we may not have an answer to that. Let me just check here. We may not have an answer to the, okay, Christine, would you raise your hand so we can unmute you, please?
I believe I'm unmuted.
Oh, go ahead.
Hi. Yep. Christine Richards, 1 Holliston Avenue, and I'm a school administrator in Massachusetts. And we are having a test and stay program through the state where if students are deemed close contacts due to school-based exposure, instead of quarantining, there is the option for daily in-school COVID testing in the mornings. And obviously, as long as students participate willingly and continuously show up for a test in the morning and test negative, they then to stay and do not have to quarantine. I was wondering if Rhode Island has something similar, but my guess is no.
Yeah, I know that option hasn't come up in any conversation I'm aware of. I have our school nursing coordinators here, our director of people personnel who have been key members throughout the summer and just helping me stay up on all the guidance. So that is not an option right now in Rhode Island.
Thank you. Other questions? Okay. Thank you for that. Moving on to our teaching and learning presentation, enrollment projections. Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Rivera.
Dr. Rivera, I am going to pull that up for you. So I will be your. Does she have the capability now? Or?
She was logged in. Can everyone hear me okay?
Can you raise a hand in the back if you can hear? Yeah, you have to be really close.
How about that?
Who's that? No, you have someone just took it over from me, right? You okay? All right. So Heather has it now.
Awesome. All right. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm going to be providing you with a quick overview of our current enrollment data, making comparisons to last year's enrollment, along with reviewing the New England School Development Council's enrollment projections for Portsmouth for this coming school year. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start with our elementary enrollment. So as of Friday afternoon, we had 405 enrolled students at Hathaway, 354 at Melville, with our current district enrollment for elementary at 759 students. So we're down from last year, and this is 24 students below the enrollment projection that NASDAQ had given us for this coming school year. I just want to note that we are still actively registering students every single day. We have appointments filled up until the start of school. So I do expect that number to grow. Okay, now for our middle school. So with our middle school, we have 634 students enrolled in middle school as of Friday and 846 students enrolled in our high school. This again is a decrease in enrollment, but we are above the NASDAQ projected enrollment for both schools. And again, we continue to register students in middle and high school as well. Okay, so now looking at our district as a whole. We have a current enrollment of 2,239 students. This is a decrease of 119 students from last year. But this is an increase of 24 students when you're looking at those projected enrollments again for this coming year. Now, this coming year, we have 5 students that are going to be attending Portsmouth from Prudence Island, and we have 95 Little Compton students. Our homeschool students went from 126 last year, and we are at 40 students this year. This includes approvals on tonight's consent agenda. Okay, so now for a breakdown of enrollment in our CTE academies. These numbers include our freshman projections. So the Academy for Education, Child Development and Human Services has 44 students. The Academy for Media Communications and Digital Video Production has 17 students enrolled. The Academy for Engineering Design, 79, and the Academy for Visual Arts and Design at 31 students enrolled. This last slide provides us with our out-of-district enrollment numbers for our CTE programs. This year, we have a total of out-of-district enrollment of 32 students. This is an increase of 10 students within the past 2 years. Students included are residents from Middletown, Newport, Tiverton, and Bristol Warren. Next month's teaching and learning presentation, we're going to dive deeper into our CTEs and next steps for growing our academies. Any questions?
I have a question. Are
Yes.
any of the classrooms full? Sometimes we have to look at opening up new classrooms
Right.
or.
Yep, so right now we have our second grade classrooms at Melville are completely maxed out. So any more incoming students, as of now, will be going over to Hathaway. Hathaway still does have space in second grade. All other classrooms still have them.
And are most of I noticed Hathaway had significant decreases, like if you move the numbers from one grade up to the next. Is that just military families for the most part?
There's a piece of it is military families. Some people haven't gotten their orders yet, so they've either left early or they haven't left yet. So it varies. It varies.
Mr. Gerber, do you have a question? No. Okay.
So these numbers will change quite a bit over the next few weeks, and we'll provide you with the final update. The key date for the state of Rhode Island, the first kind of census data that's collected through is October 1st. So that's typically by then things have kind of settled and we've cleaned up our rosters. So we'll get you with the final numbers for our October 1st report.
So thank you.
Thank you. Can I have motion for the approval of school committee minutes from August 11th, please?
So move. Second.
Both regular and executive session, sorry. So moved.
I move for the approval of the school committee meeting minutes for both regular and executive for the August 11th, and also on the executive for August 24th.
We did that already. Up top.
So we did. Second.
Any changes or revisions? All in favor? We can do a hand vote now. Unanimous, 6-0. Can I have a motion for the consent agenda, please?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Unanimous, 6-0. We does not need a motion for action. So discuss the facilities capital plan update.
Great, thank you. That's a yes to this question. I wasn't to get to that agenda item. But first up in the business portion, we have just a discussion. We said we were going to do this for each meeting now leading up to November 2nd. we will have a bond vote, special election in Portsmouth in support, hopefully, of our facilities capital plan that is currently awaiting final approval from the Rhode Island Department of Education. Do I need to, should I present, or Heather, do you want to? Okay.
You want me to pull it up?
Okay, I can,
I can do it with Zoom, but I can't do it for the big screen.
see if I can get it easily.
Try it. Oh, no, it's on the back screen.
I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah. Now? Yes, okay, go ahead.
Okay. So we have our $21.4 million health and safety plan. We are anticipating a November 2nd bond vote. We have reconvened our building committee. We have a meeting coming up this Thursday of that group. We have several members here this evening in the audience who are part of that committee. And we have so who has control of that? No, that's not me, right?
Okay.
I can't, like,
I didn't even share it.
Oh, that's your dog.
No, you're, Heather, you're.
Heather, you're there. I stopped sharing, you share.
Oh, I didn't know you, I didn't know
now
you
they
started sharing.
Now they can't see on Zoom.
Yeah, but she's going to share. Like,
Okay.
it's just, I can't tell what I'm sharing.
Who's on first?
I didn't even know I was sharing.
All
I'm
right.
sorry.
There we go.
Okay, good. So we just want to zoom in on that. That's the slide I was on. Right, we will be trying to engage with our parent community, particularly at all of our opening school events, just so everyone is aware of the health and safety upgrades this plan would bring. We would be looking at significant upgrades, complete renovations of the HVAC systems at Melville and Hathaway, including a new elevator, right, or an elevator at Hathaway. It's been a need we've had for a number of years. And asbestos abatement at each of our schools. Renovated bathrooms is the other common theme here throughout each of our schools. So full renovations of all bathrooms at our 2 elementary and our middle school. A smaller portion of bathrooms at the high school, but the project includes some much needed renovations to Memorial Drive, which definitely met the threshold based on some of the current design for a health and safety upgrade, and HVAC AC in the field house, which has been a community ask for a number of years. So in this $21.4 million plan, when you factor in the housing aid reimbursement that we are able to get with approved facilities projects for schools over the course of this bond, $8 million would be returned, over $8 million would be returned to the town of Portsmouth. And that's where, through the housing aid reimbursement, those funds go back directly to the town. So we would be getting this $21.4 million plan for an overall actual cost to the town, all is said and done, of a little over $12 million. So those are the key features we just want to make sure all of the community is certainly aware of. We have an agenda item later in the business portion. We are looking for some help with a community communications consultant to help us start messaging this. The next slide, Heather. Okay, so again, these key next steps, continuing to work. The SBA is the school building authority at RIDE, so that is the department that is reviewing and working with all districts on plans like this. So we're waiting on some feedback from them. The bond vote has been scheduled. The special election date in Rhode Island is that November 2nd date. And then really starting to ramp up our communications with certainly both internally in the district and with the general public here once the school year starts. So those are the key updates for this evening. I don't know if the committee has any questions or comments.
Yeah.
Mr. Hughes.
Yeah. Just like to put,
Can you use the mic?
just like to put this in perspective. The gym here at the high school is about 28,000 square feet. And Hathaway is about 50,000 square feet on 10.75 acres. Melville is 44,800 square feet on about 5 acres. The middle school is 157,800 square feet on 37 acres. And the high school is 193,550 square feet on 42 acres, which would be about the size also of a super Walmart or a big box in that. So in other words, we're talking about big structures that total about 450,000 square feet. To reproduce them, it would cost about $300 million to build them now in today's costs. So to come up within 5 years where the net result is going to cost us about $12 million, $12 million divided by 5 years is a little over 2-something million a year. Really what we're doing is we're just doing almost a constant maintenance on the buildings. We're not asking for luxuries. We're asking for health and safety. I'm a little bit disappointed that some of the people that were here for the mask and what we were going to do with that have left before our conversation in this area, which I think is as important with the health and safety needs of the schools. This is very important. And I think that on November 2nd, that if people, and I know that they care because we've seen the great outpouring on the masks, that they should also be out there in support of this to help our schools keep up, modernize, and provide the best facilities that we can in our district. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Can I, the remaining individual who we have not decided on salary for the FY22 is our superintendent. And I'd like a motion, please, for a 1% increase to Superintendent Kenworthy's salary for FY 2022, which is in line with the increases in the district.
I move for approval of the superintendent's salary increase of 1%.
I move for approval of the superintendent's salary by 1%.
Second.
Any discussion? I think we're in agreement. Can I have all in favor, please?
Aye.
Unanimous, 6-0. Okay, I would like to, sorry.
I said thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well deserved. I'd like to move business item D before C, please. This is the discussion action on public relations agreement with foreign communications. Can I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Kenworthy?
Thank you. So I did have item C is Dr. Como was alluding to would support this request. So item C is the budget transfer, and it asks Mr. Dura to identify money. He can elaborate further on where he is seeing that we definitely have those savings right now that we could transfer into our consulting line. And I'm asking for your approval this evening to allow me to enter into a contract with Korean Communications not to exceed $25,000 to provide public relations consulting on the upcoming school bond, promotion of our PHS career and tech academies, and communication related to our district strategic plan. You have in your backup a outline of the proposal that Mr. Horian provided for me on the bond consulting. And then the plan, obviously, that would be everything leading up to November 2nd. So anything that's remaining there in our agreement with him would shift to those other two items, the promotion of our CTE academies or communications around our strategic plan.
I would like to point out, Mr. Horan did a presentation to RIASC. I think Mr. Badney and Mr. Ferber and I were at that. That was pre-COVID, talking about strategic communications for school district. And this has been one of the issues that we've had in our strategic plan, really improving communications. So this has been a little bit on the back burner for the year with COVID. So we're now trying to kind of wrap in a lot of stuff this year. So I personally will be voting yes on this because I think it moves the district forward in a variety of ways, and hopefully will even recoup itself with some of its financial results with the CTE programs and things like that. Other comments from members? No? Okay, so we're on item D, calling the vote to approve the superintendent entering into an agreement with Horan, did you say Horan or Horan? Horan Communications. All in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, 6-0. Now moving back to business item C. Can I have a motion for that, please?
I move for discussion and action. I move for discussion and action on the budget transfer. Budget transfers over 5,000, in this case, 25,000.
Second.
Okay, Dr. Kennedy. Anything else
So
on this?
in anticipation of that agenda item that you just voted on, I had asked Mr. Dira to identify if we had the $25,000 where we could get it from, so that you have in your backup. He's identified some healthcare savings that already, just based on what he's heard from our health service providers, he can update you on.
Thank you.
Yeah, you hear me? Yeah. So we did get a member equity distribution from the trust this past year. That information came to us after our budget was already approved. That's giving us savings that we can transfer out to funds.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? All right, thank you. Seeing none, calling the vote, all in favor? Any opposed? Unanimous, 6-0. Moving on to business item E. Can I have a motion?
I move for discussion and action on revisions to, I'm sorry, I'm trying to survey.
Go ahead, Ed, no problem.
I move for discussion and action on revisions to school committee policy, BBA, for the upcoming school year.
Second.
Dr. Kenworthy.
So for this one, Heather, we're going to start with the PowerPoint that goes with that agenda item. There we go. All right, so for this one, before we get to the agenda item and what I'm asking you to vote on, I did want to take the opportunity, we've talked already, various points about masking and where we are, but just to provide a timeline of, we talked about it in great detail at our August 11th meeting as well. So the first slide, Heather, is just a recap of where we were on this discussion at our August 11th meeting, right? So at that time, I was able to share with you, based on the recommendations we were receiving from RIDE and RIDO, that based on where things had shifted in Rhode Island with the Delta variant, they were strongly recommending that districts start to consider full mask mandates into their reopening plans. We had at that time similar recommendations from the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics. And I was able to share with you some data that I was starting to see locally in Portsmouth when we looked at our data. After the July 4th holiday, which is when the Delta variant moved into Rhode Island, one thing that we can definitely see looking at the Portsmouth data is in our own community. We moved from that low moderate, based on our population of Portsmouth, it was really about 1 to 2 cases. But for a long time, starting around mid-April through the July 4th holiday, that's where we were. We were seeing very negligible case numbers in Portsmouth. After the July 4th holiday, those numbers definitely started to increase in Portsmouth. And one thing that I just thought to include that didn't come up in our discussion at the last meeting, but those numbers do include PSD students. So I have still been getting notified throughout the summer when a PSD student, because they link those back to schools, had tested positive. So within any of these numbers that we're talking about with our transmission rates, I just thought that was a point that I needed to clarify on tonight. So if we opened the school year today, there would be PSD students. This increase in case numbers is starting to affect already our student population. So next slide. So I wanted to take the opportunity then to also, one of the things you had asked me to do when we ended that August 11th meeting was to just put out, we weren't going to base our overall decision tonight one way or another on these survey results, but we did put out a survey to staff and to families. So on our staff survey, you can see the breakdown there, and 78% of our staff was in favor of kind of lumping together those first two options of full masking or a flexible policy based on transmission rates. Those would have led us at this point to open there with full masking in some way, shape, or form. So we did have a percentage there. That's 144 staff respondents. That's about 50% of our overall district staff. So very good survey return rate to kind of get a good feel. I do know that NEA Portsmouth that was shared with me did a similar survey for their membership, and the results were almost exactly the same.
That's a good question.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, was the flexibility higher among like the high school, which would have, more students vaccinated? Was it kind of distributed evenly, or did we not differentiate by school?
No, we did. So I could go back and look at that. I don't have that prepared in quick overview that I did, but I can certainly get that information for you. So next slide, looking at the results from parents. So again, we had an excellent return rate, works out to about 50% of our families again. So 831 total responses. If you kind of factor out people who have multiple children. I know last year, I think we had somewhere in the vicinity of, 1,700 or so unique families. So that again is about 50%. I would think of our parent population there. So you can see the results there, 64% total either in favor of the full masking or the flexible policy based on transmission rate. And we did have people who were looking to recommend not require, and some people who took the opportunity to put comments into the other category. So just wanted to kind of report back out on that information.
What were some of the other suggestions? Just out of curiosity.
But I highlighted a couple. See, we had more other suggestions on the parent survey than we did with the staff one. So it really kind of did run the gamut for everyone that kind of swayed in favor of no masking at all. There were ones that were in favor of full masking. So one of the most common ones under other that I highlighted was in all caps, unmask our children. That was probably the highest, in that area. And then several on the other end of the spectrum, if you will, and I just highlighted one of these, which someone put in a comment. Why are you even debating recommendations of health and safety experts? So those were things that people wanted to take the opportunity to put in comments. So final slide, then before we get to the agenda item. So with those survey results, where have we kind of turned since our August 11th meeting? Well, cases in Portsmouth have continued to increase, right? We have moved now from that substantial into the high transmission areas where I'm continuing to see PSD students reported to me in those numbers. Again, these are new unique cases when they're reported out. And we have recorded now, as of last week's data, our highest number of cases since the week of April 11th. That's when we kind of started to see things shift in the other direction, but then ramp up once again after the July 4th holiday weekend. And just to kind of put the numbers in perspective a little bit, what we're looking at there is, as of our last meeting on August 11th, that number of cases we were looking at was 9. The next week that increased to 21. And then as of last week, that was up to 34. So more than a 3 times increase in the number of new unique cases within the town of Portland. So again, that data, it does just support what we're hearing. Cases are ramping up now. We're in the midst of another surge, right? We went through a few of those last year. We saw it happen, and then based on different factors, it would dissipate. So as I shared earlier, we don't know for sure what's going to happen, but the hope is that this may continue for a few weeks, and then we will start to see things start to decline again. And then to the 2 key events that happened in this past week that I would have certainly been obligated to share with you regarding any decision that you were going to make this evening. So on Tuesday, August 17th, we had a key development. The K-12 Council on Elementary and Secondary Ed voted to direct the commissioner to reject any district reopening plan that did not include full masking. So at that point, Governor McKee still had not come out one way or another on the question of masks in schools, and the council took that action, and you've probably heard a lot debated about that. One thing though, just to kind of include here, and why superintendents, that certainly caught our attention. So district reopening plan, which I have to submit to RIDE by the end of the week, that is going to be a requirement for our ESSER 3 funding. So that's the last of that federal funding. So that application is going to come due in the next few weeks. They've shared with us the draft procedure and questions. And the very first checkbox is, do you have a state approved reopening plan? So obviously I think the council was weighing that into their decision there. And just as a recap, Portsmouth alone, we would be looking at about $2 million through that ESSER 3 funding over the next fiscal years. And then, of course, as we've discussed a few times this evening, last Thursday, Governor, he did come out with an executive order mandating that all Rhode Island schools and districts institute full masking to open the school year. We've heard already that order right now is set to expire on September 18th, I believe it is. We have a meeting on September 14th, so I think we will hopefully hear one way or another. We'll have a couple weeks into the school year. We'll have a sense of where case numbers are going in Portsmouth at that point in time. So if we could go back to the agenda item, Heather. The backup for it.
It's the
other one labeled business E up top. There you go. Okay, so again, all of that is influencing my recommendation to you this evening to basically open the school year. We had a mask mandate policy in place all of last school year. We actually updated it a few times throughout the school year to reflect changes. So one of the last updates that we made was to take away any requirements that mentioned outdoor masking, right? And so that this policy, as it stands at the end of last school year, reflects indoor masking only. So I'm asking that we open the school year with this policy, but we take the opportunity. There were a couple of areas. You scroll down a little bit more, Heather, right there would be my first suggestion for a revision. We removed that line that I've did the strike through and just insert, because I know this has come up in several conversations. So we will, as we did last year, have a supply of disposable masks available at all times in each school. So I just took the opportunity to do that in each of the sections there for employees. And then if you scroll further down, for visitors as well. And then if you vote in favor of my recommendations or any recommendations further the committee wanted to make, then at the bottom, we always put the revised date, right? So that would reflect revisions that we make this evening. So that is my recommendation to you this evening.
Comments, policy? So I'll go to policy chair, subcommittee chair first, if you have any questions, comments.
I don't have any questions at this point. I just want to point out one other issue that Dr. Kim already did mention is a change to remove a reference to full distance learning, since of course we don't have that this year. This is a policy that's served us well for a year, and at this point, this is the policy that is in place for our schools. So that's where we're going from.
Okay, Mr. Vadnam.
Well, my concern here is that last spring, we invited our high school students to get vaccinated with the promise that if you're vaccinated, the pandemic is done, you're free to do what you like. And though I intend to vote for this policy tonight, because I don't believe in protest votes, I think it goes to the credibility of the decision-making process up there at the state, governor's office, DOH, RIDE, because it just creates this credibility issue with parents, with the kids. And I'm sort of thinking now, why did I bother to go out and get that vaccination if I end up having to wear a mask anyway? then with parents. This November, it's expected that the FDA will be approving vaccine for the younger children. And I'm thinking, okay, is there a risk in this? Something that's based on a new technology. It's mRNA, which sounds kind of scary to begin with. We've never used it before, but what's the benefit? I think at some point, the governor, Department of Health, is going to have to, start applying a little common sense. Because if you tell us that the vaccines are effective, they'll prevent you from getting COVID, or mostly not 100%, or passing it, then you have to accommodate that in your policies. And, every time you move the goalposts, which is what they've been doing since this all began, again, I just don't see how it helps the situation. I think it's a very bad message for the kids, the high school students now. It will be, I'm not too sure what the parents are going to take away with it, with the kids. And, I just think it's a shame that we can't all agree, what the facts are and consistently apply those facts to our decision making.
Thank you, Mr. Shears.
As I previously stated tonight, I'm confused by a lot of the information that's been coming out. And so I certainly won't be supporting this. And I'm 72 and a half, and I disdain when anybody, whether it's the federal government or the state government, telling me that I've got to sign something or I've got to vote a certain way to get a certain amount of money for the kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to say one
Ms.
more.
McDade.
I just want to add, as you can see from the bottom of the page, we revised this mask policy a few times last year. And one thing that I am certainly hopeful about and believe will come to pass is that as the year goes by, these decisions get changed because we have new information. We have new strains of virus, we have new research, we have new results of research. And so it is certainly my hope and intention that as the year goes by, we will continue to revisit this policy to do what makes sense given the environment.
Thank you. Okay. Well, and to Mr. Vadney's comment, I did ask the lawyer for a couple of clarifying points if there were ways to have a little bit more flexibility to sort of say, can we require people to show proof of vaccination and then they wouldn't have to wear a mask in school? And the answer was no, you can't mandate proof yet, not yet anyway. And I think, and I believe that's just because it's experimental and not FDA approved, because we do mandate some vaccines, but none of them are in the experimental approval stage, right?
And at this point, we can't mandate the vaccine, so we can't determine who has it and who does not. That's the difficulty.
That's difficulty. Okay. So I think like a lot of people here, I'm also hopeful that we will, I know that we were considering going to the levels of exposure. That was one of the policies that you were considering, that if we go into low, moderate exposure, then we can obviously make mask optional, et cetera.
Yeah.
But at this point, that's not your recommendation.
I have a version of that policy that we could very easily bring forward. As Ms. McDade said, we made several adjustments to this policy. Last year, I was working on that, but the governor's mandates and needing to show that we have the full mask policy in place in our reopening plan. I don't want to do anything that's going to get our plan rejected or force us to go through extra steps there.
We do have one comment or question here on Zoom. Can we unmute Ms. Sinclair, please? Sophia? Go ahead. I'm not hearing anything. Is anybody? Nope, you're unmuted according to my screen. Do you have your?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Do I need to state my name and address? Sophia Sinclair, 201 Ethel Drive. I just want to thank Alan for his vote, and I completely agree with you. And Mr. Vadney, yes, there is a massive credibility issue at this point. The panel started talking about vaccines. The vaccine is not what they call a neutralizing vaccine. It does not stop disease. I think we've all realized that by now. In most cases, in many cases, thankfully, it buffers the effects, which is fabulous. And I'm grateful it's available for anyone who wants it, and particularly high-risk populations. But when we're talking about 5 to 11-year-olds who have just not seen the negative effects of this in any substantial way. I mean, you just compare it to any other seasonal virus that they can get, and it's just a seasonal virus for kids, like RSV and the flu. If your masking policy is tied to getting my elementary age kids vaccinated, you've got to push back. Don't accept that from the state. You're withholding a proper education for my children for something that is not an emergency for them. Parents have complied, these kids have complied. Please push for an end to this. I don't know where this is going, and that's part of the problem. You know, if we're using increased cases to reinstate masking on kids, and this is a question, what is the metric for taking masks off? I think we owe parents a plan.
One of the I don't think we shared that last week.
We haven't shared it yet.
Yeah. So there is a draft policy out there that talks about transmission rates in communities. Actually, you did talk about that when you had the slide that talked about low, moderate, high transmission. That basically says on a weekly basis, depending on where a community's at, you know, if you're in the low transmission, I'm looking over the nurse here, make sure I'm not saying it wrong. If you're in the low transmission, you
I think
know.
we had said for Portsmouth, just based on our population number. So low, moderate.
Yes.
Optional.
Okay. So
Kick it with substantial.
Yeah.
Okay. So moving forward.
Right now, I'm sorry, let me finish this. Right now, we are, we're in the high transmission rate anyway. So if we adopted that policy right now, it would be a mask anyway. And then you have the governor's requirement. Just to clarify, there was no discussion about making vaccines requirements. It was talking more to the point of, you know, if students were vaccinated, could you loosen up some of the requirements? But that's not a possibility. So that's what that was about.
Right. I understand that people are waiting for a vaccine for 5 to 11-year-olds to feel comfortable, and that's good. I'm happy for them. If that's what they need, I'm willing to wait for that with them in solidarity. But when that vaccine becomes available, I don't want it tied to if my 7-year-old isn't vaccinated, he has to wear a mask, but his friend doesn't because we can't do this to kids. I know you guys know that.
Yeah,
so I'm
not really on for discussion right now. So
okay, fine. What I wanted to offer was the high transmission with 9 cases. You know, we're never going to get out of that. We will never, ever be out of
right. Yeah.
It is as of last.
No, she was saying if that's high, that would be a problem.
Right. If 9 cases is high.
Substantial.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, substantial. It's hard to talk because it's hard because I'm not in person. I wish I was, but if 9 cases puts us into substantial, I just fear that we will never leave substantial. So can I offer, you know, they have made it very clear that school transmission rates are closely tied to community transmission rates. The community transmission rates feed the schools. It's not vice versa. So what if we looked at, for example, lining up and bear with me, like I said, I work with data for a living. So lining up the community transmission rate against the school transmission rate. And if at any point the school looks like it's spiking above the community trend-wise, that would show that there's a problem of school transmission.
I think that's a good point, take into consideration. I've just been getting signaled here. I think for tonight, we're just looking at this policy and the proposed wording changes, if we adopt them or we don't adopt them. But
Right.
I think
Wanted to offer that as an idea because I do work with data, and that would seem like a reasonable thing to look at. If at any point that would signal that we're having more transmission in schools than in the community, which would signal a real problem. If the kids are just getting sick from their parents at home, there's nothing you can do about that at school.
Okay, but that, again, I have a feeling this is going to be coming up on another agenda. It's just not on right now for the discussion, so. But
I just want to make sure that we're looking towards the future. And I did want to note that there was something that you scrolled past, and it was something about kids with developmental. Can you scroll up where it said for kids who have.
Next paragraph down, Heather.
Let me just read that again real quick.
Mask exemptions.
Younger students, schools, medical or other health conditions are developmental needs. Okay, so the developmental needs, does speech count in that? Because my son personally, he regressed starting in January. I just think that we need to take a real hard look at the kids that are in speech.
So the question is, does speech have to do with developmental needs? And I'm looking over to.
Depends.
Dr. Colwell or.
Yes, Dr. Colwell is making her way to the.
Where have we landed on speech?
Well, I think within your policy, it covers it under students with disabilities. So I would say that it falls under, maybe it's not developmental, but maybe it's under, a disability.
So again, I think our recommendation there is for families who want to explore mask exemptions, who do they talk to? The principals?
Well, and I just want to point out that I'm not saying in all settings, but mask exemptions in certain settings, for example, while speech services are being provided. There is just no rational way to wrap your brain around trying to provide speech services with two people in that.
So we had students who were receiving services. We did use smile masks. We actually bought the fogless masks that apparently were not so fogless, but we did offer services with the smile mask. And through the course of the school year, as you pointed out, as we've gotten better with it, the therapists were using judgment, using the plexiglass, and creating safe conditions for students to receive services.
Okay.
Oh, okay, but I know, a mom spoke at the last meeting and she said her son regressed. My son regressed. You got to listen to us. My son had a hard time making friends in preschool when he was 3 because no one could understand him, and it sparked his anxiety. You have to listen to me. My son needs speech services in school. Appropriate
that's
services.
something that you're going to need. That's something you're going to need to talk to the building about. But not right now in this forum.
No, that's fine. And I have and I will. I just want to make sure that the committee is aware that these are the types of things that are happening. And as a group, as a community, I know what your rules are. I'm asking you to listen to me as a mother and a human being. These kids need services that are not being provided.
Thank you. Okay. So, other comments? No? All right. I'm going to call the vote. This is on the amendments to policy EBBA. All those in favor? All those opposed? The vote is 5-1. All right, and that passes. We do not need to re-adjourn to executive session. We completed our business during the first part, so we're good there. We have our next official school committee meeting on the 14th and the workshop on the 27th. Can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous 6-0. Thank you very much. Have a good evening, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.